I really think it's so important for us to take that time to listen to other people, particularly those who are different from us and like come from a different background.
Welcome to Students Like Me. Students Like Me is a podcast by the MBA student community at Imperial College Business School. We invite fascinating people from all different MBA programs of Imperial to talk about their student lives, their thoughts, and how they learn. I am Mutita Kimakom, your host from the Global MBA program, January 2022 cohort. My guest today is Dorcas Harris. Dorcas is the Task Force and Stakeholder Engagement Lead at Department for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport in London. Here is our interview. Dorcas, thank you so much for being here with me on Students Like Me.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to talk to you.
Let's begin by getting to know Dorcas in a nutshell. How would you like to introduce yourself to your MBA peers?
Or start with a difficult question that I wasn't warned about. So I'm Dorcas. I currently live in the UK, but I grew up in India and Nepal, when people don't often know about me.
God, I've been to Nepal. I love Nepal.
Oh, wow, amazing. See, so I speak Nepali fairly fluently. It's probably one of the first languages.
No doubt you're so kind.
Yeah. Do you know what? That is a very big compliment. I think the Nepali culture is just incredible. Like I would live there if I could.
I know. I experienced it at least 2 times in my life. And I feel like whenever it's possible, I want to go back again. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. We could go on a whole tangent and talk about Nepal instead.
Yes.
So yeah, and I think I am probably not your typical MBA grad. I am the person who said I would never do an MBA. So yeah, I come from a very sort of social science, charity background. And I currently work in the civil service, a very public sector. And I have 0 private sector experience actually, which is good to know. And yeah, I love talking to people. So this is good procrastinating from my job.
Oh, my honor. Let me ask you this. I went to your LinkedIn because I really, really want to get to know you. Yes. And Dorcas, based on your LinkedIn, I see that you did a Master of Philosophy in Education, specialized in social psychology at the University of Cambridge. Right there, you examined the effects of creative expression on the well-being of vulnerable children. You started your career 2 years in Mumbai, teaching and mentoring youth in slums to support their mental health, advising school leaders on methods of enhancing learning experiences. And your work have been in organizations that involve helping and developing others since then, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah,
so what drew you to this? Why were you drawn to this?
So yeah, like I said, like I genuinely love people. I find them fascinating and, good fun. And I guess that's at the heart of decisions that I make in life, personally, career-wise, all the rest of it. So when I did my undergrad, I studied psychology and sociology. And basically with psychology, a bulk of your time is spent looking at what's wrong with people, like mental health. What are the possible disorders you could have? I'm sure I'm overgeneralizing and slightly over dramatizing, but that was the impression I got a little bit like, oh, great, we're talking about everything that could possibly go wrong. Sociology, we were talking about everything that goes wrong in society. I got a little bit restless. I was like, cool, we're talking about everything that goes wrong. What about what can we do about it now? So I think I personally got to that stage where I was like, I've spent enough time in a classroom talking about problems. I want to go out there and see if we can be part of the solution, actually. So I did a 2-year fellowship with Teach for India, which in other countries, it's part of the Teach for All network. So in America, it's called Teach for America. In the UK, it's Teach First. I believe they're in like 30 countries now. So that was a 2-year fellowship where I worked in the slums in India. It was a very life-shaping experience, I'll say. I'm still in contact with some of the young people I worked with then. And, you know, I was fresh out of undergrad. I lived in relatively a bubble existence, I think. Like, my family wasn't wealthy by any stretch of the imagination, but we were always happy, you know, we always had enough, just enough, and I didn't know any different. But then the slums are an interesting place to live and work. So I did that for 2 years. And the first year I really struggled. Like, I wanted to quit. I was on the phone in tears with my parents being like, I'm not doing this. I'm leaving. I'm coming home. But I decided to stick it out. And then the second year I realized that basically we were given a curriculum that we had to follow, and we had all these academic goals that, you know, I mean, they're a little bit unrealistic for the children we were working with. So the second year I decided just, you know, chuck the standards out. And I said, I'm going to do what I feel will work here. So every Saturday, which, bearing in mind, those kids go to school on Saturdays. Yeah. Every Saturday I put on some really loud music, bought like whatever craft supplies I could afford with my very low stipend. I got the kids like sat on the floor, and I said, we're just gonna make whatever we want, and when you're done you can glue it on the walls. Like, my head did not like me. I said you could glue it on the walls wherever you like. So every Saturday we did that, and over glitter and colored paper we had some of the most meaningful conversations with these rough teenagers, you know, and they were going through some really difficult things. And I saw the power of creative expression and that freedom to just, like, in this space, we're gonna dance, we're gonna make ridiculous crafts that don't have to look great, but we made it, so we're going to display it. And we all did that. So I wasn't a teacher in that environment. I wasn't teaching them any skill other than coexist, you know, and have fun. And I learned so much from it. They learned hopefully a lot from it. But I think the most important thing was we built relationships. So I got really interested in the power of creative expression, and then did a lot of sport with them as well, which wasn't part of the curriculum, because they didn't have sports grounds, for instance. There was no place to kick around a football, but I got friends to come in, and, you know, we were creative with where we went and finding space and sports that they could do, stuff like that. So I got really interested in that creative side of it. And it's so powerful. We know this now, don't we? There's so much research about how, like, music and art and sport can really help mental health. But it wasn't something that had been done in that context, which is what led me to my master's. And I got to do my research in exactly that, and looking at how creative expression benefits the well-being, particularly of vulnerable young people. So that was my journey, initial career path, as well as my master's at Cambridge. So I basically got to research what I'd done for 2 years in the slums, which was all kinds of fun.
Wow, that's fascinating. Okay, that's how you started your career. But now you are in kind of crisis response. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I think I worked in the charity sector, so like leading on from that for like a few years. I loved it. I worked primarily in really grassroots projects where, you know, there was an immediate issue that we were trying to work in, or there was a particular challenge. So I think really I've always been drawn to good challenge. I enjoy it. Like, I like trying to be part of the solution or just figuring things out with people. And when I had my son, so I have a 4-year-old, that's something you should know about me. I started thinking about what I wanted my life to look like. And I was really interested in leadership. And, you know, just thinking about how I could tap into my experiences and bring that into decision-making spaces. And I see, you know, the government and public sector plays a huge part in that. So I joined the civil service in the UK. And in that, I initially worked on Brexit, which was which was interesting. So I worked on EU exit initially, and then moved on to working in the COVID response.
Yes.
And a few months ago, when the Ukraine crisis happened, my team overnight moved to working on that. So yeah, I suppose the last few years have been very much in the public sector, very much in crisis mode, very quick response rate, I suppose, for our team. But yeah, there has been a common theme for me. Like, I do like a good challenge, and I love working with people who are passionate about what they do, which I've very much had in my team now, and I've really enjoyed that.
And, I had a chance to be in one of the live classes with you and listen to you seeking for advice from Mark, our organizational behavior professor, to help the team at work as they are handling very, very demanding and stressful job of crisis response for the country. And so, how are they now?
Yeah, so I think we're actually in a good place now as a team where I hope that a lot of us are taking time to invest in our own well-being and things like that. I think with my team, a lot of us went from EU exit, which at the time we thought was a really big not a crisis, I suppose, but it was a big unprecedented shift, let's say. And a lot of us went from that to COVID response, which was a very different kind of crisis. And then when the Ukraine crisis happened, again, a very different type of response. And I think what was interesting is all of us around the world have been impacted by the pandemic, right? And we've all had to process that and deal with everyday implications. However, when you do it personally in your life and you're looking at the news, but then you're also immersed in it at work, it really takes a toll on well-being and mental health and stress levels. Because the thing with a crisis is it's on one hand, it's great experience, because you get to see something that's never been done before and you get to be part of that. And you get to feel at the end of the day that we're working towards some kind of common good, which is amazing. And I don't ever want to underestimate the power of that. However, people can only go so far with that as the sole motivator. Like you need breaks, you need time to rejuvenate and replenish your resources as individuals. And I think one of the things I've had in my current team is we're all a group of really driven, passionate individuals. However, even people like that need breaks, and even people like that need sometimes to be able to turn off the news. When you're going in that crisis mode for so long, it takes a toll, and it starts to, even the loveliest people start to get a little bit cross and a little bit short in their responses, and the emails aren't as friendly, and and that there's a ripple effect there. So I think on that day when we had that conversation, I was really seeing that impact. And I think with my background in mental health and well-being, I could see it happening with the team, and I was having one-to-one chats with people just over coffee, virtually, just to talk, because when you work in a crisis team, all your meetings are about, this is the data, this has just happened, what do we need to do now? And again, for the first day, it's really cool, you're getting to be part of a big response team. However, when you've done it for 3 years, it's tiring, and you need to just be able to have coffee with someone where you talk about the weather, and that's a very British example, but talk about your pets or your children, or something normal for a change. So yeah, that's kind of a bit of background to that day. But since then, we've really been able to give people time back, and we're thinking about how our responses to both of those crises are more sustainable, and how we can move people to different roles just to give them a bit of that, that break, and a change of work scenery, as it were.
Yeah, on that day when I listened to you in the live class, and I just felt like, is there anything that we could do to support these people who try to support the others, like who try to make the society stable? I'm like, okay, the only thing I could do, probably I sent Dorcas a message that, hey, please tell your team that they are doing very meaningful job.
I think, the crises in general, things like this affect all of us differently. I don't think it's better or worse, well, in general, for any of us. We're all exposed to it, we're all impacted by it in different ways. And I think each person has different levels of resilience and different resources, so the impact it has on our well-being and mental health and things like that just looks different for each person. What you said, about reassuring a team that's working on it that it's meaningful work is actually really important, because I think there is a point where you want people to see the invisible work. Like, a lot of work goes on in the background that isn't seen. It isn't like reported in the press or, whatever. And I think it is actually hugely rewarding just for that work to be acknowledged. I don't think people necessarily want like praise and, lots of that. But just to see like, oh, I see what you're doing and I see the value in it, and, the role it plays in reopening of society or like keeping people safe or things like that. So I think just raising awareness and taking that moment to say, I see the value of this work and I see that it's really hard. And this comes from leadership internally as well as externally, from people who might not know the ins and outs of the work, but it actually has a huge impact. So what you did was really positive and really appreciated, actually.
Yeah, it's just tiny compared to things that you have been doing for us all. Yeah. So that's too much on the serious stuff. Let's bring, because
like a little bit.
So let me change the topic. Okay, let's talk about MBA student life. Can you tell us about your motivation to take on the MBA program? What motivated you?
So like I said, initially, I wasn't someone who's, aspired to do an MBA for a long time or anything. I think people like that are amazing because clearly they know what they want to do with their lives, and like me. But I was very much like motivated by what I saw immediately in front of me, like from my decision to work in the slums. I saw a problem. I wanted to see if I could be part of some kind of solution. And I've made my decisions very much like that. But working in the charities, as much as I loved it, and I was working with incredible people towards making a dent in some big problems in society, I also got this sense that at some level we were implementing decisions that somebody else has made, with no real understanding of the context we were working in. And I remember making a comment, I talk about this a lot. I was complaining about some decision that had been made about funding, I believe it was, with charities. And I said, the people making these decisions have no idea what we're dealing with on an everyday basis. And I was having a good rant about it. And my friend that was very patiently listening to me complain let me talk, and then said, well, if people like you don't go for roles like that, then you don't get to complain. And it's something that's really stuck with me through the years about like, actually, they're right. Like, I don't want to oversell my skills or experience because I don't think there's anything, great about them. However, we need diversity of thought in leadership, and we need diversity of experience in leadership. And for better or worse, like I've got that, I've worked near the slums, worked in the slums, I understand that context. I've done the working in addiction recovery, I understand the real people. So I think when I'm part of making a decision, for me, I'm always thinking like, how does this impact a real person in that context? And who do we need to talk to get that understanding if we don't have it? So I think that got me really interested in leadership and understanding how decisions are made, which, long story short, I did a lot of, research, talking to people about what skills would be useful, what I was missing. And I could see that I was really missing the business side of it. Like, it's not something that comes naturally to me. I'll very happily sit and have coffee with a friend or a stranger. But like putting a business case together, they're not really my natural state. So I could see gaps in my skills, and I saw the MBA for a way of like filling that, and meeting interesting people, which I've managed. We've started doing that with term 1, I think, and I'm looking forward to more of it.
Yes. Wow. And why did you choose to do your MBA at Imperial?
I did do quite a bit of research into other programs, and I spoke to the admissions team just to get a sense of the program and to see like what was a good fit. I mentioned earlier, I have a 4-year-old. So for me, when I had him, it was very important to me to like I still want to have an impactful career. I'm very passionate about that and making, a meaningful path in the career sphere. But then also I want to do school pickups when I can, that's important to me too. I want to be able to read to my child. When striking that balance is really hard. It's really tricky to negotiate that. And I fight for it every day to make sure I can have an impactful job. But when my child needs me, I need to be there. And let's be honest, doesn't always happen, and there are sacrifices along the way, but for the most part it's something that I don't compromise on. And this program for me really seemed to strike that balance. Now, if you'd asked me this question 4 weeks ago while I was studying for the accounting exam, I would have given you a very different answer.
Which is just 4 weeks ago.
Because it felt very all-consuming. But for the most part, at the time when I was making the decision, it seemed like this was a program that I could get a really good foundation in the skills I needed, but also be present at home and with my other roles and responsibilities. The other element of this that I love is the global cohort. For me, that was really important. And it's already really reinforced itself with the time we've had together in the last term. But just having lived in a few countries, having quite a diverse range of friends, I just think it's really important for us in just how we think and just being aware of different cultures, different contexts, different ways of approaching a problem. So for me, that was also a big part of it.
Okay, and can you tell us about your MBA student lives in a day, or how do you spend or manage your time and energy for your MBA program?
The honest, unhelpful answer to this is that every day just looks really different. Every week has looked very different. I had this one day that was just so bizarre to me because I was in London with my family. So I went into Imperial, got my ID, took my 4-year-old around the Natural History Museum. No, it's the Science Museum, actually, because he really likes space. Came out and had a call from my work saying, the Ukraine invasion had just happened, so telling me that we were going to work on that from the next day. And for me, it was that day where all my worlds collided in a way, where I'd just gone in and had this half an hour of walking around campus feeling like a student, feeling young again, and then being mom with my son, running around spotting all the rockets in the Science Museum, and then coming out and being like, oh, there's real life here, and we've had another very, very big crisis that we need to now I'm going to be working on from tomorrow. So basically my weeks, my days just look different. I have to fit things in when I can. And I think the big one for me is every day just thinking through my priorities. So some days I can't do any MBA stuff and I just have to deal with that. Like when I first got into all the Ukraine work, there was no space for sleep or study. It was very much we needed to understand what was going on, what we could do, what we could say, all of that. And then there have been weeks where I've just done the accounting study and nothing else, So I've had to prioritize in different ways. But the one thing that I guard is my time with my son. So when he comes home, I make sure that I have a good hour with him, reading, just sitting round like Lego or something, and building things and just making sure that the MBA or work, however important they might be, don't compromise on that. So yeah, it's about fitting everything in as it works on that day.
You also handle MBA as one of the crisis management sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm telling you, the last 2 years have prepared me well for this MBA. It is true, though. I think every day it's very much the same skills. It's like in the morning, what do I absolutely need to do today? Anything else is a bonus,
Yeah.
So,
wow.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So when you feel struggled as a student during the MBA program, how did you deal with it?
When I've struggled, probably not well initially. My initial response to struggle is never positive. I have I give myself a time, right? So if I'm feeling overwhelmed and like it's just all feeling really hopeless, I let myself have a bit of a panic initially and just be like, oh, it's all going wrong and I can't do it. I'm gonna fail. You know, I've done all of that, particularly with accounting, because, oh, wow, that was an interesting challenge. And then I kind of create a bit of a plan, like what can I do with the time I have? Like I had to study in like 1 week because everything was absolutely nuts at work till then. So I was like, in this week, I'm going to give myself time to study. This is how I'm going to structure it. I'm going to do that and then see what happens. You know, I'll know I did my best given the resources I have at the time. Also, like talking to close friends is huge. Talking to friends within the MBA and outside. Like I've loved having a little rant with my group on our WhatsApp. And sometimes it's reassuring to know that others are also struggling. Like I find it's terrible, but it was very reassuring to me on our WhatsApp group where others were also, you know, finding it hard, because then it's like, oh, it's not just me, we're all in this together, kind of, and we'll, you know, figure it out. But then also I found at that time having friends outside of the MBA was really important, because I could go for a walk or run with a friend and talk about something completely different, but then also talking about the MBA with somebody else, it reminded me how exciting it is to do it, and reminded me that actually this is something I really want to do, and it's something that I enjoy doing for the most part. And then that kind of builds up that motivation to be like, okay, for the next 2 hours I'm now going to deal with Excel and learn how to do some accounting, you know. But it's like constantly reminding myself why did I decide to do this in the first place, and why is it important to me.
Yeah, you are not alone. And this is not my own word. I took it from Kim's. You can go to Kim's episode and listen to what he said. Yeah, this is exactly what he said. You are not alone in this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very reassuring to have that. I think, yeah, sorry to reference my time working in COVID, but it's something that was a huge positive actually of the pandemic, of the whole world. In a sense, again, there were so many inequalities that we won't get into now, but there were moments where it felt like we were in something together, and there was like this joint effort to do things. That can actually be hugely motivating. Yeah, and I definitely feel that with the MBA.
Okay. And has the MBA changed you in any way?
Ooh, it's made me better at juggling things. I think it's been a good balance of from work, basically. So with work, as I mentioned, it's very much every day, very quick response. You know, this is what has just happened. We need to respond to it. Whereas with the MBA, it has helped me kind of pull back a little bit from that, like in the evening, listening to like organizational behavior lectures or whatever, in a sense, has pulled me back from that crisis mode to be like, there's a longer term picture here, and I'm investing in myself and my future, which is actually hugely positive. And it's easy to lose that, isn't it, when we're doing assignments and working to the next deadline. But actually, the MBA is each of us investing in ourselves and in our potential as leaders, and in our potential to make the world a better place at the end of the day. Like, I really believe that. And that's worth doing. That's worth taking the time out to do. So I think it has changed my perspective. I think if I wasn't doing the MBA actually and just doing work, it could have been, you know, where you develop a bit of tunnel vision, where you're only looking at, say, the world through a very, let's face it, negative lens with crises. But I think with the MBA, it's given me that sense of, yeah, there's a bigger picture here that I can be part of as an individual.
Nice. And any techniques that you use to help you learn and develop yourself?
Listen to other people, talk to other people. I find I learn the most from real people. And I think like just taking the time to do that is really important. And it's something I found with work as well. It's very easy to get caught in this spiral of commissions, emails, meetings, briefings, all the rest of it, which is all very important, but it's just as important to prioritize those like 15 minutes, let's get a coffee, let's go for a quick walk around the block, and just talk or not talk, but like just being with other people, listening to them. I think that's really important. And it's important for us more important in a way for us to do, because we're working virtually, to carve out that time to get to know each other, because I think there's so much we can learn from that.
I'm not going to ask every question because we run out of time. So I will ask this. Is there anything I didn't ask you and you want to tell us?
I think you had a really good list there, actually. I guess like I would talk about the immediate need for me to do this MBA was very much like spurred on by a social initiative that I started with some friends a couple of years ago called Spaces, which we're currently taking a break while I do my MBA, and other members of the team are also learning through other avenues. I won't go into what we did and all of that, but the reason I mention it is because when we started it, we were very motivated by this idea of listening to each other, and it kind of resonates with what I've just said around, I really think it's so important for us to take that time to listen to other people, particularly those who are different from us and like come from a different background, maybe approach problems differently, think differently, have different worldviews, and just practicing listening and having space for other people. It's actually not as easy as it sounds. And when we did this initiative for 12 months, every month we'd focus on a different topic, so we looked at race, we looked at parenting, gender, addiction, some big barriers, as it were. And each month we listened to somebody's story. So we got somebody in who'd had lived experience of that barrier or characteristic. And we just listened. And you learn so much from that, and doing it, being really intentional about it and challenging biases. Like, so if I have a blind spot somewhere, or I just don't understand something, could I find somebody who does, and could I listen to them? So yeah, I think for me, that's something I wanted to really emphasize, because I think the world would be a much better place if we all just could pause and listen.
Yes. And how our MBA peers can reach out to you?
I should be easy to find on LinkedIn. If you just type my name, that I don't think there's very many with the same name, and WhatsApp, just I'm on the group, so they go have a little rummage around.
Awesome. So you are unique, very easy to find. And Dorcas, thank you very much for sharing your story and perspectives with us. We really appreciate you taking your time out of your busy schedule to talk with us today. Wish you all the best for your success and your degree. Really looking forward to seeing your achievements. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This was lovely. It's so great to talk to you, and hopefully I get to meet you in person soon.
Thank you again to Dorcas for joining us. And more stories from Students Like Me will be coming in the next episode.